All right. So why is crypto so central for making America literally the center of the universe? Again, I want to defer back to MicroStrategy CEO Michael Saylor and what he's noted about the strategic geopolitical significance of crypto dominance, particularly Bitcoin, because I haven't heard a lot of crypto theorists talk about this before, but Saylor's right on with this. So we can think of money in two ways, right? So we could think of money as a fiat currency. So the currency used to buy things daily. So dollars, for example, for us. And we could think of money in terms of long-term investments and store of value. In other words, this is where you want to keep your money, grow your money, so you invest in stocks, bonds, real estate, what have you. Now, if you think it through, the United States right now already obviously dominates the fiat currency market as the world's reserve currency currently, right? Now, I know, and we cover it on this channel, at least once a month. I know that status of the nation's default currency is a bit tenuous at the moment, with the BRICS nations openly talking about trying to ditch the dollar as the world's reserve currency. Saudi Arabia is playing with ditching the petrodollar. But that said, we do have to distinguish between how much a currency is kept as a share of the reserves of central banks around the globe, which has decreased rather significantly, versus how much it continues to be used in everyday global financial transactions. And that's where the dollar still, to this day, despite 4 years of bumbling Biden, it still remains very, very strong. In other words, while nations are clearly seeking alternatives to the dollar in terms of purchases, the U.S. dollar still dominates overwhelmingly as the currency by which global populations lend or borrow or save. And it remains the dominant currency by which nations even measure their own assets and debt. Virtually every nation in the world right now prices its goods in accordance with the dollar. It continues to be the single most stable, reliable currency on the planet. Even the Chinese yuan is basically priced according to the dollar. So even though the dollar is being, at least in part, marginalized, at least to an extent, among the BRICS bloc member nations in particular, the dollar is and will remain very strong for the foreseeable future. Everyone admits that at this point, even though it's going to have at least some competitors and counterpoints. Nevertheless, it will continue to dominate the currency wars, as it were, for the foreseeable future. But what will that mean if the United States not only dominates currency, but also turns around and dominates the Bitcoin and cryptocosm? Now, remember, currency domination is only half the equation of money, right? The other part of the equation is what? It's investment and a reliable store of value, right? So you need to buy things, but you also need to store your money and grow it, right? Simple. What's the key to crypto? What's the key to Bitcoin? What's Michael Saylor been arguing since 2020? Because of its digitality. It's the only long-term store of value that keeps and grows your money without what? Who remembers? Without what? Right? What can this do that Peabody Library can't? It can access a cloud that has books that will never burn. Bitcoin is the only long-term store of value that keeps and grows your money, but without the entropic, degenerative costs that plague traditional real estate and stock investments. Right? You can't. Bitcoin is impervious to all of those entropic, degenerative forces. It's totally impervious to it, just like the books on the cloud. And so, inevitably, given the third industrial revolution of the telecosm of cyberspace, inevitably, the world is going to transfer its investment capital into the world of Bitcoin and the cryptocosm, which means that if the United States dominates the cryptocosm, we are then in a position to dominate both the world's default reserve currency and the world's default store of value. In other words, Trump is now currently positioning the United States to be, in effect, the permanent financial center of the universe and of this rising telecosmic civilization. And I'm not even I am not remotely exact. It is not a coincidence that the one man more than any other who's planning and engineering interplanetary civilization is hanging out with whom? Who is he I mean, Trump can't get rid of him, as he joked. You know, he basically lives at Mar-a-Lago now. No matter how many planets we inhabit, we are going to need some kind of financial center, at least at this point, to make that happen. And that is precisely where Trump is positioning the United States. But it gets even better.
Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power.
Well, Mr. President-elect and former President Donald, congratulations. Thank you. And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So good. Welcome back.
Gang, what you just saw there was both the president and the vice president eerily congratulating Trump and promising a peaceful transition of power. Well, that's something I'd like to believe, but it's hard to believe those words when they're coming from the mouths of pure serial liars. I mean, career liars. So what does that mean for the next few months? The opposite of what they're promising. So absolute chaos. Economically, culturally, politically. We might be in for war for all we know. So what should you do? You should at least own some gold. The markets might be up right now, but who knows what's going to happen between now and January. You need to protect yourself against the last hurrah of the worst administration America has ever had. We know it's coming. I don't know what, but something is between now and January 20th. You might think they're just going to hand over a pristine, happy, functioning country to the man they tried to assassinate and put in jail, entirely ruin. No, something's coming, and you need to be financially prepared for it. You need to talk to Goldco and protect yourself against this last battle. Get some gold in your portfolio. In the coming months, you'll be glad that you did. Click the link in the description below or scan the QR code and just chat with them. You'll be glad that you did. You ready for this? Can't stop winning. Too much winning, right? Let's go back to Trump's tweet or post here. In this important role, David will guide policy for the administration in artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency, two areas critical to the future of American competitiveness. So you get that focus there. David will focus on making America the clear global leader in both areas. But then listen to this. He will safeguard free speech online and steer us away from big tech bias and censorship. Now, it's that last part that's so key here. And this really represents, to me, the new civilizationalist populist dimension of all of this. Technology obviously is a two-edged sword. We all know that. It can be used to free us. It can be used to enslave us, right? And that enslavement we've seen with big tech and its censorship efforts. But again, it's a two-edged sword. There's another side to technology. And that other side is being led by the rise of what's called the new tech right. You need to know this because this is going to be huge for the future. This group of people, the new tech right. This is a group of ultra wealthy, ultra innovative tech pioneers who are all in on building a new civilizationalist world dedicated to faith, family, and freedom. So, of course, this involves Elon, who's made procreation, interestingly enough, procreation and demographic renaissance and renewal a centerpiece of his concern. This involves Vivek. This involves Peter Thiel. This involves Balaji Srinivasan. And, of course, it involves J.D. Vance. He's been one of the leaders of the new tech right. In fact, here's what JD said about David Sachs, so Trump's new AI crypto czar. This is what JD said about him. They're good buds. Just before the election, when he was getting interviewed by Joe Rogan.
My closest friends in the tech world is David Sachs. And Dave and I have talked about this because we were both like, it's funny, we were both sort of critical of Trump in 2016, but we came, at that criticism from a right of center perspective. And both of us by 2020 were like, this crazy bullshit has to end. Trump is our guy. And maybe not only is he our guy, but maybe he was like the only one who could have turned the tide against this insanity. And David, I mean, he has become so far out there, and I admire it in a lot of ways. But then sometimes I see what David says, and I'm like, dude, are you going to be like welcome in?
Like, what is he saying
in your neighborhood? Well, I mean, have you ever interviewed David Sachs?
No.
Well, I mean, he's just he's very anti-woke. He's very, very into what I would call foreign policy realism. Like, why are we starting these stupid wars all over the world? Our foreign policy should be more pro-peace. And it's just crazy to me because he's so inflammatory about it that and by the way, I love it. Right. I agree with a lot of what David says. And even when I disagree, I know he's a smart guy, but he is just saying, look, I don't give a shit. If you're going to come after me, but I'm going to say what's on my mind. And I think, a lot of people are going in that direction, which is fundamentally a good thing, is people are sick of being told what to think. And like the First Amendment, obviously, it's a legal document that talks about the role of government in censorship and sort of prohibits government censorship. But it's also a sort of ethic and an attitude that is endemic, or I hope is, to American society, which is we're going to think what we want, we're going to say what we want to. That's an important First Amendment value, even though it has nothing to do with the First Amendment as a legal document itself. And a lot of people are sick of being told what to think.
Now, make no mistake, what we're seeing here with what he just said there is the rise of a new civilizationalist right in its fullest sense. Now, what this new tech right of Trump and Musk and Peter Thiel and Vivek and Robert Kennedy, what they all represent is akin to Aristotle's notion of aristopopulism. So Aristotle noted that you're always going to have an elite. You're always going to have an aristocracy of some kind. It's right. Jordan Peterson always talks about the Pareto principle. You're always going to have a top 1%. Even socialist communist nations have leaders at the top. There's always going to be people with the IQ or the intellect or the drive or a combination thereof to kind of get to the top. You're always going to have your top football players, top basketball players. You're always going to have your key 1%. You're always going to have your aristocracy. But the key here, what Aristotle recognized, is that you want an aristocracy that uses their power and wealth to enact and realize and bring into being the values, interests, and concerns of the people. For Aristotle, that is the healthiest, most balanced society. That's the kind of society that builds George Peabody libraries. I mean, look at how beautiful the cathedral of books, right? People want libraries. And so the aristocracy, the very wealthy, and George Peabody was extremely wealthy, helped to build and realize those values, interests, and concerns. Now, by contrast, a society that has an aristocracy that despises the people, the Marie Antoinettes, right? That hates the people. That aristocracy is an oligarchy. What we have today in power, well, soon to be gone. This is an aristocracy that rules in accordance with its own values, interests, and concerns, often that disdain the people and that care only about their own power and wealth. That's a hellhole. That's a tyranny. But a society where the people say, screw them, let's take them down, let's rise up and bring out the guillotine, like in the French Revolution, well, then you're only going to get chaos and mob rule, and that's not much better either. So what you want, according to Aristotle, is you want a balance. You want a harmony between the rich, the powerful, and the wider population. That harmony comes when the rich and powerful use their wealth and power to enact and realize and help flourish the values, interests, and concerns of the people. That is exactly what you just heard JD talking about. That is exactly what the new tech right is all about. That's exactly what Trump and it took JD a little time, and even Sachs a little time to recognize what Trump is all about. And even Elon Musk, that's what Trump is ultimately all about. They represent a new, rising, civilizationalist world where America is at the center of literally cosmic finance and where everyone can be wealthy, precisely because there are no scaling limitations to the technologies that produce that wealth. Trump is leading our nation into a new cyber-linked civilization led by a thoroughly anti-woke, pro-traditionalist aristocracy that literally has limitless potential. So what does all of that mean? What it means is screw Johnny Ernst. Screw the rhinos. Screw all the nonsense that's happening right now on Twitter, on the Twitter feed in response, or X feed, in response to all of the absurd, ridiculous obstructionism that we're seeing in the halls of Congress right now. It literally means nothing. Nothing. How many senators can you name from the 20th century? How many senators can you name, prior to 2010 that were serving prior to 2010? Well, half of them are probably still there, right? Think about it. How many senators can you name from the 19th century? They're irrelevant. They are nothing. They are Jurassic lags that are stuck in their old industrialized swampy tar pits going the way of the dodo bird. We are the future. We are the new rising civilization that none of them can even remotely stop. Keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on the renewal, not the rot, because a new conservative age is rising, and it's going to be even more glorious than any one of us could have ever imagined.